Bernie Sanders, Healthcare and Hydro. The Canada letter. When Bernie Sanders made his way to Toronto last weekend, Margot Sanger-Katz, a health policy reporter in the Times Washington bureau, tagged along. Her resulting article in the Upshot is both a nicely drawn portrait of Mr. Sanders' excursion and a thorough comparison of Canada's healthcare system with that of the United States. Ms. Sanger had some additional thoughts about the trip for Canada letter readers, and I have two related questions for you. Is public health care a defining feature of Canada? If so, how is that reflected in the nation? Please email your thoughts to nitkanalta@nitums.com so that I can share some of them with other newsletter readers. Read, what did Bernie Sanders learn in his weekend in Canada? My colleague Dan Levin updates of story he's been following in British Columbia. Read, Canada's $7 billion dam tests the limits of state power. The Daily 360 went to Iqaluit, Nunavut, to create an immersive video of throat singing by Tanya Tagak and Lochulak Williamson Bathory. I could almost feel the warmth of the wood stove in the room. Watch, big music in small rooms, throat singing. The staff at Watching, The Times Guide to Movies and TV, has put together a list of new offerings by Netflix in Canada this month. It's heavy on classics and includes Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein and Oliver Stone's Wall Street. Read, the best movies and TV shows new on Netflix Canada. In November, when BlackBerry still made phones, I often collaborated on articles with Brian X. Chen, the Times-led consumer tech writer. He's not someone who is easily impressed. The 2 days with an iPhone X, which came out on Friday in Canada at a staggering starting price of $1,319 Canadian dollars, left him full of both praise for the device and caution for consumers. The iPhone X feels ahead of its time, perfect for a target audience of technology enthusiasts and obsessive photographers, Mr. Chen wrote. Everyone else may want to wait a while to buy. Read, the iPhone X is cool. That doesn't mean you are ready for it. Gina Kalata, a Times science writer, has looked into predatory journals, academic publications that will print just about anything, including a spurious study claiming that people can slim down by eating chocolate. In her article, she quoted Derek Pine, an economics professor who took on the uncomfortable task of analyzing the publications of his colleagues in the schools of business and economics at Thompson Rivers University in Kamloops, British Columbia. His study, which appeared in a reputable journal published by the University of Toronto Press, found that 15.5% of his colleagues' papers appeared in dubious journals, including the entire output of one faculty member. Professor Pine told me that he suspects the use of predatory journals to puff up academic resumes is likely to be more common at smaller universities where there's lower expectation that professors will find a place for their work in prominent journals. He also found a connection between higher salaries and larger grants for professors who went to doubtful publications. That, he said, could create trouble for Canada's publicly funded university system. The taxpayer might come to get upset, he said. Read, many academics are eager to publish in worthless journals. Statistics show that the National Hockey League is serious about its crackdown on slashing. There's a growing consensus that it's time for the Canadian Women's Hockey League and the National Women's Hockey League, which is based in the United States, to come together. In opinion, Paul Heimbecker, a former Canadian diplomat and senior government advisor, called on the United States Congress to block President Trump's attacks on the North American Free Trade Agreement. The Times classical music critic Zachary Wolfe attended a Toronto performance of works by the Canadian composer Claude Vivier, whose music explores the connections between the living and the dead, and whose life ended in a murder by a stranger. The Times International Real Estate column highlighted a condo in Ottawa's Lansdowne Park that overlooks the stadium hosting the Grey Cup later this month. During the 1980s, hundreds of black-painted silhouettes began appearing on buildings in Manhattan. The menacing figures were the work of Richard Hambleton, a conceptual artist from Vancouver, British Columbia. He died this week, and Richard Sandemer's obituary tells the story of a life which, at times, was as black as Mr. Hambleton's art.